Okay, what we're going to get started with is creating a block or a right block and then later inserting it into what's called our assembly drawing. So from the beginning of this part right here, what you want to do is go ahead and turn off the layer or the visual dimensions so we can get rid of those. We don't want those to go with us into our block and into our assembly, so I'm just going to go ahead and turn that layer off so I can't see it. It did say that it was the current layer, so I did want to go ahead and freeze that. You could switch to a different layer at this point. We could go ahead and put it back on our objects layer and everything will be alright. So you have your current layer valid if you needed to make any kind of drawings. So what we're going to do now is we'll switch over to the insert ribbon. The insert ribbon has a create block. There's two different blocks here. Create block, like we went over in class, is the block that's created inside of the drawing, so that block would exist only inside the drawing. And then we have a right block that actually saves to a specific location. So for this exercise, we're going to use a right block because we're going to move all three of the blocks into one assembly. So I want to be able to call up that drawing. So basically what we're doing is creating a drawing within a drawing. So I'm going to go to right block. I do want to pick points. So I'm going to pick point. I'm going to pick the location that I want this to insert. So I'm going to pick this intersection right here. And then I'm going to select my object. So I'm just going to draw a window around the section view only. Right click. And now what I want to do is to actually specify that path. So I'm going to click on the little browse box over here. This is under the destination, so I need to specify where I want to save this new block. So I already had it set up to go into my assembly folder. I'm just going to highlight this and I'm going to call this a bearing. And then I click save. And OK. So it just created a new drawing. Let's take a look over here. So I just created this new drawing called bearing, and it's just the bearing that we've selected inside of that folder. So you're going to do this 3 times. You're going to create a block for each one of these. So I'm just going to do this again. Turn the dimension layer off. Go to insert, right block, use the pick point to establish the insertion point, select my objects, right click, type in the name of the part, save it, and we'll do that the 3rd time, the base plate, dimension layer off, right block, pick point, select the objects, save it, Alright. So that gives us all 3 of our parts saved as their part names, the base plate, the bearing, and the collar. So the next step to this assembly is going to be creating or starting a new drawing. Create a new drawing on your A-size title block. So this is just your A-size title block. We're going to start by inserting those 3 objects. So while we're still on the insert ribbon, we're going to click under the insert tab, and I'm just going to click on more options, so then that way I can go to my browse, and I'm going to locate that assembly folder where I have the 3 parts shown. So I am going to bring in the base plate first. When I bring in the base plate, I have 3 things that I can choose. The first one, the check is going to be default for your AutoCAD settings to specify the insertion point as you bring that on. So what that means is that insertion point that we created over on the right block is now going to be the point where we're going to insert it into this drawing, and we're going to now be allowed to put that anywhere we want. So we can use like the object snaps to either place it on another line or another intersection, or we can even type in a coordinate. So I'm going to use the specify on screen. The scale, if we needed to change the scale of this drawing, we could have the option of changing the scale. I'm not going to need that, so I'm going to leave that unchecked. And then the rotation. Some of these parts are going to need to be rotated as we bring them in, so it'll just prompt us to go ahead and make that rotation as we bring it in. And you'll see that in just a second. So I'm going to bring in the base plate. Oh, and we have the option to explode it when we bring it in. We do not want to explode it. We want to keep these 3 units together as much as possible. For this particular drawing, we want to keep them together. Sometimes there is a need where we would actually want to explode the block as we bring it in, but not for this one. So I'm going to bring in the base plate. I'm just going to specify that location, and then I'm going to go back to insert, and I'm going to bring in each one of the parts. So the next one's going to be the bearing. Okay, so this one, when I created it, was the part's vertical. The insertion point is at that center, and that's going to line up with this center. So I'm going to click on that. Oh, and it didn't. I forgot to, let's just undo that. I forgot to bring it in and change the rotation. So let's go back to Browse, go to Bearing, hit OK. I could have rotated it, but I wanted you to see that it will prompt you for the rotation. So now it will rotate. I can turn my ortho button on or type in -90 and it would insert that. So that's the second one. And the last one is the collar. I've got the rotation there already on because I know it's going to need rotating. Oops, wrong point. Oh well, I'll put it there and move it down. So each one of these items is a block, so you can see that now it's all grouped together. So for that instance right there, if I had exploded it, I would have had to have gone through and picked out each one of those lines and moved it together, and that would have been a little bit more complicated. But each one of these is its own block, and each one of them has its own drawing. The drawing is not linked to the existing drawing, so if you do need to make a change to the drawing, we are going to be able to double click on the block and make modifications, but for right now we're just going to stop at this point. This is what you should get done today, and then tomorrow we'll work on editing the blocks.